Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in Hastings, Florida over a century ago. These are articles directly out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. So sit back and enjoy as I share with you a few of the stories from the September 26, 1919 edition. Sensational arrest is made by Chaz Green. After Constable Chaz E. Green effected the arrest of Joe Petty in Deep Creek Swamp on the charge of manufacturing moonshine liquor, it was learned that the prisoner is wanted in Georgia, where he is said to be under life sentence for the murder of a rival in love who died in the arms of his sweetheart as a result of the wound inflicted by Petty. After locating the illicit still some weeks ago, Constable Green watched the place closely until last Monday. The raid was carried out most successfully and resulted in the uncovering of a second alleged whiskey still. Joe Petty, who is alleged to have been going under the assumed name of Jack McLean, resided on what is known as Turner Island in the Deep Creek Swamp, a difficult place for officers of the law to reach without detection. Constable Green and Silas Bird made their way down the creek in an open boat, coming up behind the Petty hut. So courageously and well was the arrest made that no blood was shed, and the constable of the 11th District is receiving the deserved congratulations of his friends. Mr. Green suspected before the arrest that McLean was none other than the Petty wanted in Georgia, where he had served but about 4 years of his life term, having escaped some 6 years ago. He now awaits the arrival of Warden J.B. Smith of the Midgeville, Georgia prison to take the prisoner away. The story goes that Petty waylaid, shot, and killed a boy by the name of Cruz, the two being in love with the same girl in Georgia more than 10 years ago. Officers regard Petty as a desperate character, which makes the work of Constable Green the more important. Considerable shine has been in circulation about the county for some weeks past, and officials believe that a large portion of it was being manufactured on Turner Island. Educational association will be organized in Hastings. School building is object. On Monday evening, the Hastings School trustees held a joint council with the People's School Committee, which was elected by the mass meeting September 17th. The joint committee discussed ways and means for developing the campaign for a new school building. Mr. Mark from Jacksonville, representing Mark and Scheffel Architects, was present. It developed that a building to meet the requirements of the Hastings district will cost about $70,000 at the present time, and it will probably cost more later. When the county school board meets on the first Tuesday in October, the committee expects to appear before them to ascertain if there be any means by which the Hastings district may receive aid from the county. This is thought to be no more than fair, since it can be shown by the tax records that Hastings has in the past contributed largely to schools in St. Augustine. In fact, our county superintendent has repeatedly assured the people of Hastings that the county board would help us secure a new building. Growers entering the oil game. Some of our millionaire potato growers are not entirely satisfied with only potato money and are now going to pyramid it on developing Florida oil lands. The company organized is the Florida Home Oil Company. Its holding in the counties of Calhoun and Jackson constitute over 12,000 acres of land carefully selected according to the survey of geologists. The present purpose of the company is to drill for oil and also to traffic in leases. Already the acreage could be sold out, as the lease price per acre has gone to $5 and higher where the oil leads are closely followed out. The trustees have ordered 2,000 shares to be sold for $25 per share for immediate drilling, and will hold the balance of the shares at $50. Deep Creek will act as drainage canal and be artery of local commerce. The Deep Creek improvement work soon will be an accomplished fact, and boats will be permitted to pass through the channels. 2 sharp points are being cut away by blasting, and for the past 3 days, it has been possible to hear the reports of the dynamite charges for miles around. One of the cuts included approximately an acre and is literally full of cypress stumps. The completion of these cuts will mean the virtual straightening out of the creek, and the route will be one of the state's leading inland waterways. It will be of sufficient width and depth to accommodate any of the large riverboats without trouble, and will serve as a most important commercial outlet for the Hastings territory in the near future. With the widening, deepening, and straightening of the waterway together with the removal of logs and other obstructions in the stagnant waters, a serious drainage question is solved, for the creek will be able to easily take away the water from the lands south of Hastings. It has a fall of 8 feet or more from end to end with a clean sweep to the St. Johns River. Augustine approved for air route stop. St. Augustine is not to be left behind these days as regards the flying game. It would seem for the American and Canadian Allied Flying Circuit has its eyes on the ancient city and has written Charles Young in part as follows. Airplanes are now coming into their own. Flying is becoming more and more popular, which is reflected in the public clamoring for joy air rides in and around the cities and resorts of the United States. This winter, there is no doubt flying will be in demand in southern cities and at the more exclusive resorts. The aviation facilities a resort or city has to offer will be one of the crucial factors in determining the choice of a winter sojourn. In response, Mr. Young wrote the headquarters of the flying circuit in New York City that he believed St. Augustine would offer a good field for operations. As for the landing ground, he said the course of the country club had been used for this purpose, and that probably an arrangement could be made with the country club for its use. So it would seem that the day of passenger air travel in this part of the country is not far distant. This winter, the sight of airplanes skimming over the old town may become so frequent that no more attention will be paid to the whir of their motors than is given now to the sound of the trains which pull and pant at the Florida East Coast Railroad Station. Visiting nurse accomplishes untold good. During the summer months, no one has been busier than our visiting nurse, Miss Frances Jones. In August, she made 401 visits to families in St. Johns County, bringing comfort and healing into every home. On 5 of her trips to Moultrie, Miss Jones carried ice to relieve a patient suffering from hemorrhage. She also collected clothing and distributed it to 3 families. 1 baby has been supplied with condensed milk for 2 months. Jones shows no partiality, but nurses for the colored race as carefully as the white. Through her efforts, a day nursery for colored children is maintained, and at present this institution also shelters 4 colored men chronic cases. In July, an equal amount of work was carried through. 267 visits were made, which means 12 visits a day in the month, including Sunday. And our nurse is supposed to rest on Sunday, visiting only those sick who would indeed suffer without the daily attention of a trained nurse. Southbound travel heavy. Mr. Lopez, manager of the surprise store who arrived home from New York on Sunday, reports southbound travel from New York very heavy. Extra sleepers were necessary to accommodate the demand on the day he left for home. The greater part of the travel, he says, was through to Cuba. Spud's farmers repairing roads. The farmers in Spud's section have been busy repairing the roads in that neighborhood, which have been badly in need of attention for some time, and they are making a good job of the matter. These roads have been so neglected that the farmers decided to take a hand in the matter, and their efforts are already resulting in marked road improvement. The Hastings Herald had more than just news stories, but also local notices that were more of a social report, a way to know what was going on in town and in the personal lives of its residents. Here are a few from this edition. Enjoyed fish fry. About 80 members of the Oddfellow and Rebecca Lodges from St. Augustine and Palatka enjoyed the fish fry given Thursday afternoon at Federal Point. The residents of Federal Point very kindly gave the use of their club room and park for this occasion, and in this way an ideal place for the outdoor party and the novel supper was provided. Accepts position with Hastings Drug Corporation. J.D. Hurst of Cairo, Georgia, arrived in Hastings the latter part of the week, having accepted a position with the Hastings Drug Corporation. Mr. Hurst has been in the drug business for several years and is a pharmacist. Of course, we are glad to welcome Mr. Hurst as a citizen of Hastings and hope he will find his new surroundings pleasant. Erecting barn. Dennis Wilson is building a new barn which will be capable of holding large quantities of feedstuffs for stock and at the same time houses animals. The structure is modern in every detail. To purchase tractor. G.W. Beach, one of our progressive farmers, has recently purchased 2 plows suitable for use with a tractor and will acquire the latter piece of machinery at an early date. Mr. Beach intends to replace his mule teams with machinery and will doubtless be able to handle a larger acreage with more efficient results. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. And to wrap up this week in Hastings Headline History, how about a tune from the time, a 1919 hit, It's Nobody's Business But My Own by Bert Williams.
Delegation of deacons from a hard-shell congregation called on Parson Brown. Seemed that someone had volunteered information about some scandal that was going around, and they thought was really unbecoming to a preacher, and begged him to state his case. He looked them all over one by one, and then told them to their face, "Brother, it ain't nobody's business but my own, what I do when my preaching's through. So kindly please stop messing around my home. Leave me alone. What I do in church you all can see. So never mind worrying about me privately. It is nobody's business but my own." I hope you heard me. This delegation of deacons couldn't come to no conclusion, that is, about the case in hand. They didn't argue too much because they figured they might lose him, and they all liked their preaching man. So, at last, they come to the point and told him, "You have to stop or resign." He says, "Now, brothers, I ain't no diplomat, but listen here, let me tell you all what's on my mind. It ain't nobody's business but my own, what I do when my preaching's through. So kindly please stop messing around my home. Just leave me alone. There's a time to preach and a time to shout. There's a time a man's got other things he wants to think about. And it ain't nobody's business but my own. Think about yourself, because it ain't nobody's business but my own, what I do when my preaching's through. So kindly, please, stop messing around my home. Just leave me alone. When a flock of sisters seek my door, you old deacons get so, but it ain't nobody's business but my own. Now, do you hear me? Good evening, good night, goodbye."